Oh, you got a kiss.
He's not sleepy though, so he's
Today
definitely ready.
he's like...
Hey, Skeeter.
You draw the skeeters?
Now, if you guys haven't met me yet, throughout the course of your visit here in the park, just a couple things to keep in mind. We ask you guys stay in the stand, especially once the dogs come out of their homes and are running with the sled. And just a couple things about myself. This is my first summer here in Denali, my first summer in Alaska. So decided to come up and check out the last frontier state, but I've had the privilege of working in 3 other national parks. And just with a show of hands, how many of you all have visited other national parks? Alright, so most everybody, and if you guys can just raise your hand again, if one of those other national parks had a working dog sled kennel. Alright, so nobody, right? Of your 407 national parks, Denali is the only one that does have a working dog sled kennel. So it's pretty unique in the Park Service, and you might wonder why we have these dogs here, why we have this program. And it's an important part of our history, not just a traditional form of travel and part of Alaska's history, part of our country's history, but part of Denali's history. So in the early 1900s, you guys can imagine how difficult it would be to get to this location, the interior of Alaska. There were no trains coming into the area, no roads, no planes around at that time, and even boat travel was fairly limited. Not too many navigable rivers in this area, and they would only be accessible during the short summer season. So folks that came up here, especially during the gold rush, and to live that frontier lifestyle, they quickly realized that sled dogs were the best way to get around. Even horses had difficult time getting around, both the combination of our harsh winter conditions and mountainous terrain, so they were not a good option by any means. So when Charles Sheldon came up to the area in 1907 to study the Dall sheep here for a whole year, he knew that he would need to get around and follow their movement. So he hired musher Harry Karsten, and together they went out through this area, and during their travels, Sheldon just fell in love with this place. He saw that it was so valuable, so beautiful with all the vast open spaces and wonderful scenery, and also he was just so amazed by the abundance of wildlife, but also alarmed because many of those animals were being taken by hunters, and in some winters as many as 2,000 sheep were being harvested. And he feared that the interior of Alaska would go the way of the Great Plains, and that suddenly this wonderful resource of wildlife would be completely wiped out. And so he went back to Washington, D.C. after his visit in the area and lobbied for the next 10 years to finally have this park set aside. So he was really determined, persevered, and we can thank him for the park today. And when the park was created, of course, we needed to have a ranger here keeping an eye on all of these animals. And Harry Karsten was the choice. So he was a very experienced musher, and he had the job of patrolling the park, protecting the animals from poachers, all by himself for the first couple of years. So here he is in a 2 million acre park, having this daunting task all by himself. But he wasn't alone for long. He quickly realized he would need his own team of canine rangers to help him do his duty. And so these 2 men could not have left their legacy without the help of the sled dogs. And so we can really thank the sled dogs and their great abilities for having Denali National Park here today. And I think it's time we check out their abilities and see what they're capable of. So we'll get all those dogs hooked up. So guys, once we get everything hooked up, all the dogs are ready to go. You're going to see things happen really quickly.
Wow.
And this is what happens when you run in the kennel.
Get this chain off me and let me out.
They all want to come. Look at him. Oh, look at this.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah.
They have to be able to listen and understand the commands of the musher, and they also have to guide the rest of the team. So they need to be confident and focused. They can't just go running after every squirrel and every bird that they see. They need to keep the team on track. And behind our lead dogs, we have our swing dogs. So we have Spur, and today's a special day for Spur. He is 9 years old. It's not his birthday, but this is the last demo that he will be participating in. So he will be retiring today. And we also have Tatum. So the dogs that are in the swing position here, right behind the lead, their job is to help with the turns, especially making sure that they're wide enough that the swing or the sled can come around. If we had a larger team, we'd have some other dogs here in the middle, and then next, closest to the sled itself, is the wheel position. And so here we have Blue Cork, and who's ever in the wheel position, they have an important job as well. They're all important in some way, but the one closest to the sled has to be strong and powerful. They are pulling most of the weight, so they're responsible for helping to get all of that weight going, especially in the winter conditions when things are locked in with ice. So each of these dogs is capable of pulling 50 pounds, but up to 100 if it was needed. And they're not just excited about what they do, but extremely well adapted to be out there in the winter conditions. So if we take a look at them, we can see that they have these large paws, and not just large paws, but their toes are close together, so nice and compact. If they were out there with toes spread apart like this, they would get clumps of snow in there, it would melt against their body heat, and then they'd be running on ice balls, which can cut up their pads. They also have long, powerful legs, so great for getting through some of that deeper snow and for pulling all of that weight. And those of you that have had a chance to pet the dogs, they're very fluffy, very furry, so not just long fur, but dense coat. So right now, this time of year, a little bit less dense. Pieces of hair going flying everywhere, you can probably see that. So they have a 2-layer coat. Underneath is the warmer hair, and then the nice guard coat on top. So that keeps all the rain and snow from getting into their guard hair and lowering their body temperature. And like many of the wild canines out here in the park, these guys have nice fluffy tails. So when they're sleeping out there, even in the -40 conditions, they have that fluffy tail to bring around and cover the tip of their nose, so keeping them nice and warm. And not just those physical characteristics that we're looking for. You guys probably see that they all look a little bit different in coloration, but they are all Alaskan Huskies. So those colorations are not necessarily going to determine whether they're good at their job or not. But we also need to have not just physical characteristics, behavioral characteristics that we're looking for. So our dogs see about 50,000 visitors a year each summer, so they need to be friendly and also have that heart, that spirit to do the work that they do. If they don't have that, they may get retired a little early, but usually the age of Spur here, usually 9 years old is when they get retired. And they go to good homes, so Spur will be going to someone who lives in a nice cold northern climate in Minnesota. And these dogs, they're so well adapted for the work that they do, they can even outperform snow machines. So when snow machines first came around, they were these huge, bulky pieces of equipment, and just like early technology, not always so reliable. So they broke down a lot of times, they went through the ice, so not really great. We decided we liked getting around with the sled dogs a little bit better. And even by today's standards, those snow machines still require heavy fuel. They release a lot of pollutants into the atmosphere and create a lot of noise. So just another reason for our sled dogs. And these guys actually are more reliable. They can sense things that the snow machines are not able to do. Sorry, picking up some of that wind. These dogs can guide us through whiteout conditions, where folks on snow machines, they're going to be just kind of wandering out there lost. They can tell when you're at the edge of a cliff and save your life, and even pull you out of the ice if you've fallen through. So a lot of other things that those machines are not able to do. And these guys have been out here for a little bit. They're huffing and puffing. It's going to be time for us to have them run home, so you guys will get to see a really awesome experience. And we're going to take one of the use for us here today. So their job is not necessarily going out and looking for poachers who are after the wildlife in the park, which is represented by our caribou antlers in the background. Today they're part of some very important projects with all of the other divisions in the park and sometimes even other parks. So you guys will see behind me some chunks of wood. So we had a bridge that washed out a little while ago due to heavy rain events and flooding. And so now we have pieces of all this debris scattered out there in the park's 2 million acres of designated wilderness. So these are areas where they have extra level of protection beyond what the national park status gives them, and areas where man is to be a visitor who does not remain. And so that means no permanent structures or things like that, and definitely not having pieces of wood sitting out there. So they go in the winter, pull out some of these pieces of debris, but they also help transport things into the wilderness. So next to our debris, we have this weird fuzzy looking thing. This is part of a soundscape study that they did in the park in the remote wilderness area. And the dogs hauled out this material during the winter so that the scientists could have everything out there that they needed during the summer season. And if any of you have hiked on the Triple Lakes Trail and have gone over the suspension bridge above Riley Creek, anybody walked that trail so far? All right, well, it's a really cool suspension bridge, and to get all those materials out there for the bridge, the dogs hauled them out during the winter season, so when the trail crew was ready to construct all the material, everything was right there ready for them. So those are the types of activities that the dogs are able to do in the park for us here today. So the park's legacy is not just from Charles Sheldon and Harry Karsten, it's the continuing legacy of our sled dogs as well. And so as you guys go out to enjoy the rest of the park and the rest of your public land, you might ask yourself what your legacy is to these very special